problematic behavior. Technological progress is like an axe in the hands of a pathological criminal. Albert Einstein. The subject of criminal behavior is not our focus for this book, but it cannot be neglected because it constitutes an aspect of dark psychology. Profilers, criminologists, and law enforcement agencies benefit immensely from the study of criminal behavior. In psychology, the term criminal behavior is not often thrown around because it is the general consensus that crime is a behavior, and but engaging in crime does not necessarily make one a criminal. Of course, there is a lot of debate on this type of thinking, but we should leave that for the experts. Our focus here is on those elements that makes a person commit a crime. Specifically, I want us to explore why people employ the use of dark psychology to hurt others. This hurt could be physical or emotional. But before we go further into this, I should bring your attention to something important here. Certain people do things simply because they can, not because they were propelled by some childhood hurt, a need to carry out vengeance for an offense you may or may not have committed. They do it simply because they can. As humans, it is in our nature to try and understand why. We want to make sense of our situation, rather than believe that we are just victims of random acts. But we must also be prepared to accept that sometimes the situation is really just as it appears. A person driven by their own personal desire to hurt others. If you bought this book seeking to find answers to questions like that, you should also open up yourself to the possibility that this person was just downright evil. For a person to commit a certain type of offense, there are usually certain characteristics they display that indicate this person may be capable of this. This goes beyond judging a book by its cover, because prolific criminals are often master of disguises. They charm you right before they disarm you. In our everyday lives, these people mask themselves as one of us by pretending to have your best interests at heart. Given what we now know about manipulation, deception, and hypnosis, we are aware that predators are not always strangers. So, how can you spot those things that help you make better choices in relating with people? For this chapter, I am going to address 4 traits. As we delve in deeper, we would explore these traits and more in detail. 1. The family and friends. You know that saying, "Show me your friends and I would tell you who you are"? Apart from yourself, examine the circles this person runs in. Do they come from a close-knit family? What is their relationship with their family like? Have you met their friends? If this person has no friends at all, it could be a red flag. 2. History. We like the idea of a person being completely reformed, and in all honesty, this happens. However, you shouldn't ignore the fact that a person with a bad history has a higher tendency of becoming a repeat offender. If the person was abusive in their previous relationship, there is a possibility that they would be the same way with you. Not unless they have undergone or are actively undergoing treatment. 3. Problems with control. People who do not have the ability to control themselves in situations that provoke them have a propensity to inflict harm on others. In the same way, people who have a problem relinquishing control have it in them to snap and lash out at the nearest victim when they lose it, and that person could be you. 4. Antisocial values. In social settings, monitor their interactions with others. People who are generally disliked by all are red flags. They don't have to be liked by all, but if the person is generally obnoxious, rude, and poor at getting along with people, you may have a problem on your hands. 5. Substance abuse. Dependency on any form of drug or alcohol is a clear indicator that this person is struggling with certain issues. The abuse of substance negates their ability to reason properly and make sound decisions. A person who abuses drugs or alcohol may not be in a position to treat your relationship as a priority in their lives. And unless they have a way of supporting that lifestyle, you may end up paying for it directly or indirectly. This can lead to years of abuse and neglect. These are just pointers to criminal elements in the people we relate with. As with all things human, there are exceptions and there are variables. But the biggest mistake you can make is to see definite pointers and then just rationalize them. We have a tendency to make excuses for others. The first thing we are quick to tell ourselves is that no one is perfect. But that ideology can quickly land us in hot waters. Educate yourself, be aware, and then make informed decisions. These do not guarantee that you would be able to keep these types from hurting and taking advantage of you. But you are able to protect yourself from them 100% better than if you are acting from a place of ignorance. Some of us are inherently wired to want to fix the people in our lives. We see someone who is obviously broken and think if we love them hard enough, we can bring them back from the brink of whatever precipice they are on and begin our journey to a happily ever after. From my personal experiences as well as the shared experience of others, I can confidently tell you that this is highly unlikely to work. The best case scenario is that you become broken and spend a better part of your life healing from what you could have easily walked away from earlier. Reverse psychology. Sometimes I push you away because I secretly hope that you would pull me closer. Unknown? Reverse psychology is a more refined form of manipulation. Technically, it is defined as a technique involving the assertion of a belief or behavior that is opposite to the one desired with the expectation that this approach would encourage the subject of the persuasion to do what is actually desired. The major difference between reverse psychology and manipulation is that the person who is being manipulated is given an illusion of choice. They are made to believe that they are actually making a choice to do what they want, but in reality, they have been subtly coerced into doing exactly what the manipulator wants. Pretty neat when you think about the thought process that goes into pulling this off, until you find yourself in the same shoes as the victim. Reverse psychology is a technique usually employed by parents in raising their children. It works well on kids who are considered resistant to authority. On the surface, this appears innocent with no obvious harm to the child or their psyche, but it has also been known to backfire. In our day-to-day activities, we use reverse psychology in our relations with others, and it is not always born from malicious intent. Let me give an example, using a wedding planner and his client. Say this client is very set on the choices of color that they want to use on their wedding day. Nothing wrong with that except that the colors in question come across as complete garish and outlandish, especially when compared with the exotic venue for the wedding and the prestigious guests invited. Obviously, the wedding planner cannot tell the client their color choices are too trashy. Instead, what he does is agree with the client and then politely tell of a story that hints of a very important guest who has also been invited for this wedding, trashed a previous event because of a similar color, but then quickly adds that he is sure they can pull it off somehow. This gives the client an pause. They rethink their choices and voila, the planner gets what he wants in the first place. Marketers employ this technique in selling their products to consumers as well. They agree with their consumer market on certain decisions, and in acknowledging their agreement, they are able to convince their customers to buy into their services. But parents and business owners are not the only ones guilty of using reverse psychology. We use this technique in dating as well. Most relationship experts would tell you that we are conditioned to want what we can't have. So to make a person like you more or want you more, you make yourself unavailable to them. It is a paradox, really. As with every form of reverse psychology, it can also backfire. Playing hard to get can appeal to the hunting instincts of a man, but unless you plan on being elusive forever, you are going to have to stop running. When you stop, the hunter recedes, and then you have a stalemate. Part 3: Key areas in our lives that make you vulnerable to dark psychology, love, and relationships. Those that go searching for love only manifest their own lovelessness. And the loveless never find love. Only the loving find love. and they never have to seek for it. D.H. Lawrence. Now that we have gotten the gruesome part of dark psychology out of the way, let us bring things closer to home. Because, let's face it, you read all that and probably thought to yourself, hey, this does not apply to me. I can never be in that situation. Granted, the chances of things getting that gruesome are rather slim. But never make the mistake of assuming you are immune to the powers of dark psychology. Its influence is much closer to you than you think. The most common place where elements of dark psychology are manifest is in our love relationships with our significant other. Love is a universal language. It is a primordial emotion that we all instinctively crave. As humans, we are designed for love. We want to love and feel loved. No one is as happy as a man or a woman who is in love and know they are loved in return. Some people mate for procreation purposes. Some people mate in order to negate societal pressure. Some even mate to promote the alliance between powerful families. But the primary reason for relationships, aka getting a mate, is love. That said, it is easy for things to degrade to a point where love is used as a bargaining chip for more power over another individual. And this is where elements of dark psychology come to play. You have heard of the saying, use what you have to get what you want. In the business world, that kind of thinking comes with the terrain. But in relationships, it is called manipulation. Let's explore this example. A woman knows that her partner finds her sexually alluring and irresistible. Perhaps there has been something she wanted from him for a long time, but has failed to obtain his willingness to comply despite the long drawn-out conversations they may have had about it. Let's say that what she has always wanted from him is his physical contribution in doing the house chores. His obstinate stance prompts her to devise a way to make her partner become compliant. She has to do this without coming to him outright and saying something like, vacuum the living room, or else there will be no sex tonight. Although that has been known to happen in certain homes, it would surely backfire, especially if you are dealing with people who have a natural dislike for taking instructions from others, no matter how well it is phrased. So instead, she bides her time. When she finds him in the middle of doing a random chore, she pounces on him, giving him sweet accolades and saying things like how she finds him. So, emphasis on the S, attractive when he is doing whatever it is she finds him doing, and then she indulges his sexual craving for her. The impact of this tactic is even greater if he normally has to work to get her this excited. If she does this consistently, he subconsciously gets the message that him doing home chores could equal him having good sex later. Over time, he becomes programmed to doing the chores he would naturally have declined to do because of the sexual motivation his partner offers. This scenario is seemingly harmless. But if you observe closely, dark psychology was used here. The fella was manipulated into doing things, albeit willingly, for his partner just for sex. She understood his weakness and played it to her strength to get what she wants. The good thing is that in this case, everyone goes away happy, because the woman gets the valuable contribution she needs from her partner, and the man gets the sex he craves with the woman he craves. But things are not always this mutually beneficial when dark psychology is involved. This can get really dark for the victim. Let us look at this other couple. I would call this new couple Dave and Maya. Dave and Maya have very contrasting personalities. Dave is a homebody, and Maya is a vivacious extrovert with lots of friends. On the surface, it would seem that their difference in personalities complemented each other perfectly. This was until Dave felt the need to exert more control over Maya. But he knows, probably because he has already tried, that he can't use outright force to get what he wants. So he begins a campaign to get Maya under his thumb. He starts by nitpicking little details about her, like her choice in clothing, makeup, hair, and even makes snide comments about her weight, under the guise of love, of course. This starts affecting her confidence, and when she brings up her friends, he uses flimsy incidents to illustrate and back up his theory about some fictional feud between them. Things like "they're jealous of you" usually works. These little seeds of doubts grow and fully blossom into a wedge that drives Maya and her friends further apart. With no friends and poor esteem issues, thanks to her newfound low confidence, she is made to feel like Dave is the only person who truly cares about her and accepts her for who she is. This drives her to want to do everything she can to please Dave, thus putting her exactly where he wants her to be, under his thumb and fully under his control. In the two cases I used as an illustration, we see instances where relationships that are supposed to be about the two persons involved becomes a channel to fulfill the desires of one partner through manipulation and deception. Both relationships started out with good intentions, and while the end result of the former proved to be a satisfactory situation for both parties, in the later story, the reverse is the case. The similarities here is that all victims did what they did out of their feelings for their partners. It therefore goes on to say that our desires to be loved can leave us vulnerable. It can be manipulated and exploited for the gains of others. Blind faith and religious beliefs. If we seek solace in the prisons of the distant past, security in human systems, we're told, will always last. Emotions are the sail and blind faith is the mast. Without the breath of real freedom, we're getting nowhere fast. Sting. I am just going to throw this out there and say that blind faith does not only refer to the belief in one supreme God or higher deity. Some people chose to believe in science. Regardless of what faith you practice, there is a fact that our faith sometimes creates a blind spot that distorts the reality, causing us to make decisions that we probably wouldn't if we were in our right and proper state of mind. But before we get into the what, let us look at the why. When I talked about vulnerability in an earlier chapter, I did say that the very things that makes us human are some of the things that makes us vulnerable and susceptible to the machinations of dark psychology. For some people, these influences are evident than others. Our beliefs in deities predates even the earliest civilization. Man has always regarded his existence as a small fraction in the universal scheme of things, and so we believe that there are forces that are bigger, greater, and divine. If you examine things logically, this kind of thinking made sense because it helped our minds cope with the inexplicable things that happens all around us. You see a beautiful flower and marvel at how something so exquisite and delicate could just be. Without thought, without pattern, it just is. We look at the big expanse of the sky and wonder what lies beyond. Does it just go on forever? Or does it just taper off into an endless end? When you hear the powerful roar of the waterfall, or the earth-shaking sounds made by a thunder blast, even with the advancements and knowledge made available to us, we still quake in fear and awe. Back then, your choices were to either let the fear drive you insane, or you rationalize the situation by pinning it on a sovereign being that is bigger than you. Some of the braver folk chose to use science to do their explanation. Staying with this same line of thinking, when someone we love dies, we are forced to confront our own mortality. Our grief is compounded by questions regarding life and death. Does the journey end here, or does it continue into the afterlife? This has been a strong motivational force behind today's belief systems. The fear and consideration given to the life after this life has spurred many into making the right choices here, so that when death comes, the life that we hope continues after us is favorable for us. It is our own way of manipulating the final outcome, so to speak, because the alternative, as it has been portrayed to us, is so grim. Some people prey on our fear of the afterlife, that they use it to manipulate us into getting what they want. If we hold this afterlife theory in such high esteem, you can imagine how we treat people who are considered mouthpieces of the deities that control the afterlife. Pastors, imams, rabbis, and all other form of religious leaders are held in such high reverence that their words are considered the words of the deity in question. Generally speaking, these religious leaders are meant to apply morally sound principles in accordance with their respective offices and act in the best interest of their members. If not for any other reason, at least to promote the tenets of the faith they claim to represent. However, this is not always the case, as we have come to realize. A lot of religious leaders abuse their roles and influence by deceiving their members into making decisions that only serve their selfish agendas. The common tactic is to use the name of the principal deity to twist the words that are drawn from the religion's sacred manual to mean new things that corroborate whatever story they are making up in order to help them successfully manipulate the people. A lot of people have been swindled, physically hurt, and even made to commit atrocious crimes under this guise. Another method these false leaders use is claiming to have a vision or spiritual insight into a specific need that the victim has. They create an elaborate story that is a mishmash of lies interspersed with the truth, usually obtained unknowingly from the victim or third parties, and the main goal is to extort the victim for money, favor, or just power play. Some victims are coerced to part with more money than they can ever hope to have. In some cases, young impressionable victims are brainwashed into living in fear under occult-like situations. But scenarios like these don't just end in religious houses. There are people who are not affiliated with any religion, but they like to consider themselves spiritually open. Such people would encounter fake psychics and mediums who claim to have a strong connection with the netherworld. Again, our attachment to people who have died, as well as our concerns for what happens after death, clouds our judgments and leaves us open to crooks who would like to manipulate the situation to their advantage. They employ the same trick of the false religious leaders, using deception and lies to manipulate their victims. Victims go for a 10-minute psychic reading of their horoscopes and palms only to get strung along for years with promises, altered realities, and false hopes, causing them to spend thousands and thousands of dollars searching for the elusive truth. People who place their hope in science are not immune to manipulations. If you are thinking that because your faith is anchored to legible and factual science, you cannot be influenced, think again. When there is a crisis, people revert to what they believe in. For a science believer, you naturally turn to science. There are cases where people with debilitating medical conditions seek out unconventional medicine in a bid to outlive the disease. Knowing that the best of conventional medicine has failed, they turn to these outliers who claim to have the solution with their experimental drugs and never-been-done-before medical procedures. Unfortunately, these procedures are too risky, too expensive, and often uninsured. But the slim chance of life is worth every penny, and this is what the fraudulent people exploit. And it is not just in crisis. You have people come up with wonder solutions to a mass problem, like weight loss and so on. They claim that their latest diet fad, wonder pill, or technology can transform us using scientific theories that have not been tested and verified. A lot of people buy into the promise of this transformation based on information that has been specifically manipulated to extort victims. The main difference between religious con leaders and these purveyors of fake science is that instead of a deity, they use science when swindling their victims. And sadly, most people don't realize until it's too late just how badly they are being affected. When it comes to belief, those who use dark psychology key into your deepest needs and exploit it. They use that which you hold sacred to manipulate your thought process. And sometimes, the sacredness of it doesn't really matter. As long as it is important to you, they consider it a gold mine of some sort, and there is no greater time to mine an individual, so to speak, than when that individual is experiencing a crisis. This is because, in your moment of crisis, you are at your weakest and most susceptible to the influences of others, and people have been known to manipulate things to their own advantage.